All right, folks, welcome back. This is part 2 of our Centmin Mod WooCommerce Hosting tutorial series. Hopefully you've seen part 1, you've followed through and installed your first WordPress site on your Centmin Mod server. We're going to continue on with part 2 now, and there's some required reading for part 2 as well. We have a video which we recorded a little while back just installing our Shoptimizer WooCommerce theme on Cloudways, what we've done just in the last little while is I've taken the WordPress installation that we installed in part 1 of this video, and I have gone ahead and installed Shoptimizer and configured Shoptimizer for speed, basically following on from our tutorial a little bit earlier in the year. So there'll be a link in the description below to that tutorial. If you've not seen it yet, go check it out. I've followed the exact same steps that are in that tutorial in their entirety, and I've ended up with a Shoptimizer installation running on Centmin Mod. So what do we want to cover in this tutorial? There's a few little subtle differences from what we did in our last Core Web Vitals focused video when we installed Shoptimizer on Cloudways. And I'm going to talk you through them now. And basically, this is one of the main reasons why we went and actually recorded this whole series on Centmin Mod. It gives you a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more configurability that you don't get on some of the other managed WordPress WooCommerce hosting platforms. So one of the things that we are doing that's slightly different from when we deployed Shoptimizer on Cloudways, you might remember that we used Jetpack and recommended Jetpack for image optimization on that installation. And I did mention in the video at the time, Jetpack is not everyone's cup of tea. Okay, that's the long and short of it, to put it mildly. So today's configuration basically gives you an alternative to that, which is to use a plugin called WebP Express. And WebP Express doesn't play particularly well on the Cloudways platform right now. I've asked them actually to do some work on that and improve their compatibility and support for that platform. But the good news is that the Centmin Mod WordPress configuration plays perfectly with WebP Express. So we're going to go through and set that up, and that will put us in good stead for some future videos when we're going to talk about some optimization steps that we want to take on our PDP, our product description pages, and our PLPs, our product listing pages. So there was one thing I just actually forgot to show you at the very end of part 1 of this series, which is that anyone who was eagle-eyed and paying very close attention to the video might have noticed that there was a few setup steps to complete at the very end of the WordPress installation. And here they are: to complete setup, enable permalinks, and there's some settings here that we need to do in our Nginx helper configuration. So just to recap, what that basically meant was just going in here and setting your post name. This is without doubt what your permalink should be, right? So just select post name and save. That will be your permalink setting. And the second thing you need to do is one of the plugins that gets installed by Centmin Mod is a plugin called Nginx Helper. So you might again remember on Cloudways we have a plugin called Breeze, and Breeze is our page caching solution. Nginx Helper is a helper plugin that's used to help clear our caches when we're on Centmin Mod. And you'll also remember from part 1 of this video that we're using Redis as our page caching engine. So what the Nginx Helper plugin does is allow us to make it very simple for us to purge your Redis cache. So you'll see here, once the installation is complete, you'll see this last step of the checkbox being set isn't completed automatically by the plugin. So hence this recommendation here to actually go in and enable purging and set the meta to Redis cache. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. So to do that, again, it's settings, Nginx Helper, and then we select enable purge. And you'll see here we've got two options. We've got fast CGI cache and we have Redis cache. We want to select the Redis cache option here. And then this basically gives us a number of different options here. The host name, the port, and prefix. And all of those are just fine. Number of purging conditions here. Again, I recommend all the defaults. They're quite sensible. And we're going to go ahead and enable logging. You don't need to do this, but again, it's useful just on any new setup. I always typically do this at the beginning. Remember to switch it off when you're in production, just to ensure your logs don't build up. Now this plugin's quite well behaved. It actually does have a max log file size, which is very useful and helps control the size of your log files. So we'll save all changes, and that's that plugin setup. And there's a number of other things here that we don't need to do because we're not using CDN enabler and we're not using the responsive theme. So we're using Shoptimizer. So we don't need to, we can ignore these last steps 2 and 3, just do 1 and 2. So they're both done. What that basically does now, if you want to validate that your caching, your page caching is actually working, if you just go to your front end and just open it in an incognito window, and again, you remember from our earlier tutorials in the year, we talked about Core Web Vitals. If we just look at actually inspect the headers, what you'll see now is that the Xcache is a new HTTP header, which is outputted from Redis. So we can see that we're getting a hit, which is good, which basically means that our page caching is now working. The other thing you can do to check and make sure your page caching is working is just view the source of the page. And right down the very bottom, you will see if we've outputted correctly the, where is it? Nginx. Hold on, did I actually enable it? Oh, do you know what I need to do first? I probably need to purge my cache just to make sure that it actually picks up the new settings here, because we want to enable the timestamp in our HTML. So let me just do that again, just to be ultra paranoid, and just open another incognito window, warm up the cache like we've done 1,000 times before on different platforms. Check our source, and now you see that our timestamp is there. So that way you know that your page caching is working, cached using Nginx helper. There's a timestamp, the number of queries, etc. So we now know that our installation on Centmin Mod is installed with Shoptimizer. It's fully configured with our page caching. Even now, if I was just to show you some quick Google PageSpeed Insight scores, you'll see that we're comparable with our Cloudways installation, if not a little bit better. So let's just have a quick look here and I'll show you. And just while that's running, just to show you our web page test scores here, they're incredibly fast, right? So we're getting LCP scores here, 1.3 seconds. You can see the waterfall is very, very nifty, very, very fast. Again, this is the reason, no pain, no gain. There's a little bit of work here. You can see we're hitting 97 on mobile, right? So our LCP is down around 2.1, which if I remember correctly, just from our earlier videos this year, that's even faster than what we were achieving on the already very fast installation on Cloudways. So Centmin Mod really does the business when it comes to highly performant WordPress and WooCommerce installations. Now, there's one other thing. So I mentioned Jetpack. We're not using Jetpack here. And I mentioned installing WebP Express. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, WebP Express is a free plugin. And this, so typically, if you don't want to use Jetpack, totally understandable. If you don't want to use Cloudflare Pro, which was the other option we recommended earlier in our Core Web Vitals video this year, which is about $20 a month. Again, that's a understandable reluctance to do that. WebP Express is your next best bet. Okay, so it's now when you install WebP Express, you'll immediately see, if you're on an Nginx based server, you'll see this big warning up here. You're not on an Apache server or on Lightspeed, and it'll basically say that there's a set of Nginx rules that you would need to install and configure. The good news is Centmin Mod's already done that, so you don't need to worry about figuring out. You'll see in the plugin here, you'll see there's a number of Nginx rules they provide you. You don't need to worry about any of that. George has already set up what needs to happen to ensure that WebP files are served correctly on the front end. So the plugin still needs a little bit of configuration work to make it work correctly. Let me just get rid of that. And what we'll do here is, now, one of the things you'll just need to watch out for with the Centmin Mod Nginx configuration, we do need them to be in a mingled configuration here, which just basically means the WebP files or the plugin will create get mingled into your existing uploads folder, and they'll get appended with a WebP extension. Now, don't worry about that. You won't need to worry about, well, what does that mean on the front end? Do my users see PNG files? Do they see JPEGs? Do they see WebPs? The redirect rules will mean that users, the file name won't change on the front end, but actually the image they're getting will be a hell of a lot smaller. It's actually going to be using the WebP compression algorithm, which leads to much smaller files. And what else do we need to do here? I don't think there's anything else. Again, all these are sensible defaults. Centmin Mod has installed a number of the different, we're spoiled for choice folks here really in terms of just different thumbnail generation libraries being installed on the server. So again, you want to play around with these settings, be my guest, but the defaults are more than sufficient. Some tutorials around WebP Express will tell you need to have Vultr HTML. You don't need any of that setup. In fact, it's recommended not to have this on the Centmin Mod configuration. That's for performance reasons. Anytime you have to alter HTML and do output buffering and all that kind of stuff, there can be all sorts of weird problems. We don't need it. The good news is we have a very efficient setup here. So let me just check and see now. Are all our settings okay? Uploads and themes, JPEGs. We could actually probably switch that to everything, all content actually, which will ensure that every single image gets converted to a WebP. Let me just save that again. And then what we want to do here is, rather than relying on any of the dynamic converters, we're just going to actually bulk convert everything that already exists in our media library. And we'll let the plugin actually just go ahead and bulk convert those. So that's going to take a few minutes. And what will happen is, you can see here, it's happening right now, is that WebP Express is actually going through all our existing images and generating WebP equivalents of our existing images, which is fantastic. And again, depending on the number of images you have on your site, this may take a while. You can see the Centmin Mod servers cranking through them fairly quickly. But again, we've got about 300 and something images to get through, so it could take a little while. You may see the odd time a little bit of the odd failure here and there, and that's probably down to maybe the JPEG itself being encoded in a slightly strange way. You could do that one manually if you need to be, or you can just leave it. It's up to you. Sometimes if the images are pulled in from an external source, that can cause issues as well. But by and large, the plugin should get through pretty much all our images with no issues. So again, I'm just going to let that run now, and I'm going to pause. As soon as that's finished, I'll come back. Okay, so we're back and our bulk conversion is done. You can see that actually only took about 2 minutes actually to complete, so it didn't take long at all, considering there was 300 something odd images for it to convert. And you can see straight away we're saving 43% of our total image size, which is fantastic. So basically what that means now is, once I get out of this, we can go, and what else do we need to do? I'm just trying to think, is there anything else we need to configure on this? No, we should be good actually. So let me just check. Let me just purge our cache now. Actually, let's save our settings one more time. And then I'm going to purge my cache. That should do it. So let's now have a look and see if we're seeing WebP images on our front end instead of our JPEGs and PNGs, which would have been seen before. So let me filter in here. Yes, there we go. So you can even see straight away WebPs are coming in, right? So now if you look, you'll see what I mean here. Look, the file extension hasn't changed, right? So PNG, JPEG, etc. But because the browser, if I click on that now, you can see, right? The request headers here basically say, here we go, content type image WebP. So, which is very, very useful. And the way the plugin is configured and the way Nginx is configured here, it uses the vary headers. So basically, if a browser comes along, you can see vary accept is set here. If a browser comes along that doesn't support WebP, which there's very few now, to be quite honest, there was until about a year and a half ago. Safari on mobile was the big one that didn't support WebP. But that's ancient history now at this point. You look at most common browser statistics, almost the vast majority will support WebP. However, if a browser comes along that doesn't support WebP, the way things have been configured with Centmin Mod is they'll see the original file here, the PNG or JPEG type will be served. But if the browser supports WebP, now they'll get the WebP. So what we've been able to do here is quite interesting. As a result of using Centmin Mod and using WebP Express, we've now done a couple of things. We've removed the reliance on Jetpack for image optimization, which is cool. And the second thing that we've done is that we've removed an external request that we would have previously needed for our largest contentful paint, which is very, very important, because relying on having to load a third-party origin server, i.e. Jetpack's external domains, adds an additional bit of latency to that largest contentful paint time. So we've removed that now because we're only just hitting one single origin for all our images, which is great. So as great as CDNs are, and they are wonderful, and Cloudflare Pro is super because you don't need a separate origin for Cloudflare Pro. When you do use a CDN that, for example, cdn.mydomain.com, it's adding an additional bit of connection time which is really, really important for Core Web Vitals now for your largest contentful paint time. So if you have to connect to another domain just to load this image in the beginning, while it'll speed up all your other requests and all that kind of stuff, if you can remove that reliance, that's super in terms of our performance and our key metrics. So again, you can see, look, we're still in the ballpark here of around 97 on mobile, which is fantastic. And the other thing that'll have happened there as well is when we'll rerun our web page test again, we'll see that our size will have come down. Now, because we are already pretty well optimized, size won't be that much of a reduction here because we're lazy loading all our images as per our earlier tutorials, but the full load time or the full size for all the other images that aren't being lazy loaded as they download on the browser, as the person scrolls down through the page, will be substantially smaller again, as we saw an average of about a 43% saving on the size of the files, which when it comes to performance, every little bit helps. And you can see there now we're down to 237. So that's a good reduction. And that's our desktop score. We'll see we're hitting 100, still hitting a 97 there on mobile, which is fantastic. So let me see what is next that we want to do in this part of our tutorial. I think that is it for this particular part. Let me just see here now. Is there anything else? No, that's it. So what we're going to be doing in the next part of this tutorial featuring Centmin Mod is we're going to be turning our attention to our PLPs, our product listing pages, and our PDPs. So we're talking here primarily about our shop page, which is this guy, and like any of the category pages associated with it. And we're also talking about, that's our blog categories. Why am I clicking on that? Any of our individual men's, women's, etc., those categories. And we're also going to be looking at our PDPs, our product description pages. So already you'll find that these pages are pretty well optimized. Like if I just put that through PageSpeed Insights, we'll let that run there now pretty quickly. Hopefully you'll see those pages are pretty well optimized, just thanks to the hard yards that we've put in to date in terms of configuring the plugin. So we're already hitting low 90s or rather. Now, one of the very big challenges with WooCommerce and PDPs are the images. You can see they're loading quite late here, right? And that gets worse when you've got a gallery of images to load. You'll also see issues crop up all the time around CLS on these pages. So there's definitely work that needs to be done on these pages, and we're going to take a look at that in part 3 of this tutorial. So stay tuned. If you have any questions on any of the things we've covered in this brief part 2, let me know in the comments below. I look forward to hearing from you guys. We'll talk to you soon.